This Monday, the Academy released the nominations for the 91st Academy Awards, and as a surprise to no one, they neglected to award any nominations to a single female filmmaker under the category of Best Director. So today, I'm here to talk about some of the movies that may or may not be deserving of some of those accolades, definitely more than some of the movies that were recognized this year. But to help me on this journey, I have enlisted the help of the co-host of the First Cut podcast, Miss Sabrina Ramirez. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
I am excited too. It's always a pleasure to talk about some underseen movies, some movies that
Definitely
a large amount of people seemingly haven't seen at all. So
yeah, and these are definitely ones that deserve a lot more recognition than they're getting. So it's always good to kind of like spotlight that, you know?
Yeah, 100%. So we have 5 films apiece. I have no idea what you picked, so this is a surprise to me, and I haven't told you what I picked, so this will be a fun journey for the both of us.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Okay, so let's kick off with your number 5 pick. What did you select?
Okay, so for my number 5 pick, I chose Booksmart, directed by Olivia Wilde. And some of the reasons why, it was so exciting for me to see this kind of film done from the point of view of teenage girls. I feel like we've seen this kind of like young comedy, like raunchy, with a lot of male protagonists. And I love to see those female protagonists. It really, truly captures that experience, you know, just like really fast. Am I allowed to say like sex?
Yeah,
like
it's
shit?
Fine. Yeah, no, you're fine.
Okay, I'm like, yeah. Wait, how far can we go? Okay.
No, this is totally fine. I don't think we're going to have a lot of children interested in female-directed independent films of this year, but
I'm like, how PG is this? Okay.
No, it's fine. Go crazy.
Yeah. Really capturing all that experience of being a teenage girl, you know, talking about like sex and just like kind of acting gross sometimes, because in reality, that's how we are. And it's not something that we get to see too often. Beanie Feldstein and Caitlin Dever's chemistry is so amazing, and they were perfectly casted in these roles. And Olivia Wilde's direction is incredibly refreshing and exciting. I feel like it's a really enjoyable movie to watch. A lot of fun getting to see it in theaters, drinking a little wine with your friends before, and just having a big laugh. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. So that's why that's my number 5.
I saw Booksmart at the South by Southwest Film Festival, and since then, when it came out into theaters, I wanted to go see it again, and I've showed it to family and friends. Like, I absolutely love that movie. And after the film, Olivia Wilde had spoken at a Q&A, and she had talked about some of those movies that she had grown up on, movies like Dazed and Confused and things like that, and that she felt like she didn't have a movie like that for her demographic and something that she could relate to as much. So yeah, I have Booksmart on my list as well, but it's a little bit higher for me, so we can get into a little bit more detail then. But for my number 5, I have Lulu Wang's The Farewell, and I would say that it's absolutely like one of the most touching films that I saw this year. It deals a lot with culture and with family and the differences between these different cultures in China and in America, and how we view death and family and emotion and all of those things. And I think it's also like a really funny film. It's a very clever movie. All of the cast is really wonderful. I was very disappointed to see Awkwafina not receive, or this movie at all, receive any nominations. That was a huge bummer for me, because I definitely thought this was one of the best films that I got to see this year that was absolutely deserving of some love from the Academy Award. And yeah, I know that this is, I'm not surprised, which sucks, you know, because it's it's a foreign language film, but it's intended for American audiences. So I understand that there's going to be that barrier between some people who just aren't interested in this type of story, which is a huge bummer, because I mean, I talked about like, if you are just not willing to watch films that have subtitles on them, specifically for the reason that you just don't want to read, you're missing a lot of really great stories. And if you're someone who actually loves movies and loves seeing other people's perspectives, movies like Farewell are going to slip through the cracks, which is a huge bummer.
Definitely. And that actually, it's so funny. That goes to my number 4, The Farewell.
Oh, great. Cool.
Yeah. So
awesome.
Right up here to talk about it with you. Exactly. The way Lulu Wang kind of takes this personal story, because it's loosely based on something she went through. The way she takes this personal story, but shows it to an audience, and you can take it in so many different directions. You can really, it highlights the cultural aspects of it and the differences between anybody who is like has parents who are immigrants, which like mine, I have a father who came from Mexico and a mother who came from Poland. So I have my entire family is this weird mix of cultures. Cause we have like our American aspects to like our family dynamics, just like things we do as like traditions and like whatever. And then back with, my grandparents, making tamales around like Christmas time and stuff like that, and stuff I hold near and dear to my heart. So to be able to see those kind of traditions of their culture on screen is something that I admire a lot. And the way she told the story from this perspective of Awkwafina's character and how she's aware of this awful like news, and then she has to go and like pretend like it's not a thing. I could not imagine having to go through that. And a lot of it is driven with Awkwafina's performance. A lot of the emotion obviously comes from Lulu Wang's directing, but she really, really is a standout. So I supported her a lot, on like Twitter and things like that to get a nomination. So it is another thing that's, super disappointing, but again, not surprising. Also, I really truly did want Lulu Wang to get a Best Director nomination. I knew it wasn't going to happen, but she's on my personal list for the top 5 easily. And so it is a shame. And it's exactly what Bong Joon-ho was talking about when he said, once you get past the 1-inch barrier of subtitles, you'll be open to so many, not even just open to so many more beautiful films, but open to so many more stories and so many more cultures that you don't fully understand and never thought you would unless you see a film like this. So it is really interesting. I wasn't ever aware of the fact that people do tend to hide if their families have like an illness and that kind of thing. It's something that's incredibly interesting to me, and I'm really, really happy she shared this semi-personal story.
Yeah, it's great. That's like one of the best things about movies is you're able to share new perspectives and new ideas and new experiences. And a lot of the experiences and exposures to culture that a lot of American audiences are going to be exposed to are accessed through things like the internet and through TV and through movies. And I think if you're not willing to watch those films simply because you don't want to read part of the movie, again, you're missing out on some of those experiences. And that also is a nice segue to my number 4, which is a film that I saw at South by Southwest. It's titled Alice. Now, this is a movie that it won the Grand Jury Prize at the festival. And after seeing the movie, I totally understand why. It's a really touching, brilliant movie about this woman. She has a young son and she's married, and she returns home one day and all of her money and a lot of her possessions are just gone, along with her husband. And so she's left there with her son. She has no answers. She doesn't know what's happening. And the movie follows her as she attempts to provide for her child in any means necessary, doing whatever she can to provide for him. And it also features one of my favorite performances of the year. Her name is Emily Pipinier. She's a French actress, so I apologize if I mispronounce that name, but she's really magnificent, and it's a really, really beautiful film that I don't think is available to stream yet, but I think maybe in 2020 there might be some more opportunities to see this movie, as well as a lot of other films that I saw at this festival. So if you come across it, or you guys watching this, I really recommend it. It's a really beautiful movie.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the really cool thing about doing these types of discussions, because I had never heard about that. So now once I do get the chance to see it, now you put that into my mind, and I'm definitely going to go check that out.
Yeah, and I think also for the people watching this as well, I mean, even some of the movies like The Farewell, or some films that we'll be talking about now, movies like Booksmart, you can go watch that on Hulu right now. And I know there's a lot of people that want to support female filmmakers but don't know what to look for or how to access those. And movies like Booksmart, as well as The Farewell, they're very easy to access. And if you want to support female filmmakers and you're upset by some of the decisions that the Academy has been making, it's just as easy as, hopping on Twitter and telling Olivia Wilde that you loved her movie so much, because I'm sure that she would greatly appreciate that. So what is your number 3 pick?
My number 3 pick, actually, that's so funny that you mentioned that, because Alma Harrell, when I posted my Honey Boy review, she actually liked it. And I thought that was so cool that they're so open to this kind of stuff, and they're so interactive, because like the love that they're getting, I'm so happy that they're able to see it the way they do. So my choice is Honey Boy, directed by Alma Harrell. So I think she did one of the best jobs this year at directing this. There's actually a lot of women working behind the scenes. The DP was a woman. I believe the editor was a woman. So, I mean, that's a triumph in itself to have some kind of film like this with so many females behind the scenes. It's incredibly written, beautifully acted. It's super honest, raw, and intimate. And a lot of that has to do with Alma's directing. Her personal touch in this, her hand in this, you can see it. And it's really beautiful to see how Shia could be so vulnerable with his writing and, like playing his own father. Like my heart was in pieces for half of the film, but it's incredibly courageous of him and the result's fantastic. And it's completely elevated by Alma's directing. I truly do not think the film would be the same without her.
Yeah, I think after seeing the film, I really do admire Shia, especially considering everything that he's gone through in the past 10 years or so. His career has really ebbed and flowed. And to see the result of a screenplay that he wrote when he was in rehab and him reflecting on this trauma that he experienced when he was a child, it's really fascinating to like, you hear that all the time of like, oh, this is so-and-so's most personal movie, but you're like, well, how do you really know that? But it feels like this really is Shia's, it's like his most personal movie yet, because he's in the movie playing his own father. And at times it feels like you're watching a film that you shouldn't be watching. It feels way too intimate, and it feels like in a lot of ways like a personal diary of someone who's trying to kind of process all of these ideas and all this trauma that he went through, that it feels like it's far too intimate for you to watch. And I think that level of intimacy is due in large part of Alma Harrell, who is her steady hand behind the camera. It really, really makes that movie what it is. And speaking of intimacy, my number 3rd pick is Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which is probably one of like the most intimate movies of the year. Like this movie is absolutely ravishing, which is like, I don't think that that's a word that you can use very often in film. And it's unfortunate that this movie wasn't France's official submission into the Oscars. So I think that's a big reason that why this movie didn't get a lot of award season love, which is really unfortunate. But I would encourage audiences who haven't heard of this film or who haven't seen this film to seek this movie out, because I compared it to Call Me by Your Name, not only because of its subject matter, but and because of its tone, the way the film's shot, and the performances and the subtlety and the pacing of the movie. Some audiences might consider this film to be too slow or too boring, but I think that it is very methodical in the way that it plants these seeds, and it creates this really elegant, this really beautiful movie that is absolutely sprawling. I mean, like, this is a film that's up there with probably movies like 1917 or maybe like even of like Avengers Endgame, of movies like, if you're going to go see this, you got to go see it on the big screen, because watching this movie on your iPad or on your phone, I don't think it's doing it justice, because this movie is absolutely freaking gorgeous. And it's really unfortunate this isn't receiving a lot more awards talk.
No, I completely agree. Because it's actually my next choice as well.
Oh my gosh,
yeah,
we did it.
We're together on a lot of this.
We're in sync.
But yeah, so, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, directed by Celine Sciamma. I think it is the most sophisticated film I've seen this past year. I actually did the same thing. I compared it to Call Me by Your Name, with that kind of like slow burn romance, the direction, the acting, the way it all melts together to create something so beautiful. And it's, it's what we've been saying about the subtitles and those barriers. I wish more people would give it a shot, because I feel like if they were able to, they would love the result of what they've just experienced. I mean, it is one of the most emotional films I've seen of the past year, and I'm very emotional, so stuff hits me easily. But this one, I know, I know for a fact, like, I had such a great time watching it, and it really did leave me speechless at the end. I couldn't believe how stunning it looked. It was directed, like it was acted, the dialogue, the way even something I mentioned in our review was the way the actresses were able to convey emotion so well, literally just in their eyes. And then with this engaging narrative, I mean, I was so surprised that for myself, that a period piece would have this engaging of a narrative, just because it's not usually my cup of tea. But I'm so happy I was able to check this out in theaters. Shout out to ArcLight Cinemas, always coming through with these films. So yeah, that's my next choice.
Yeah, Little Women doesn't make my list this year of my top 5 favorite films, but it's similar to Little Women in the sense that even though it's a period piece about women, I think both directors find a way to make the movie relevant and fit in a more contextual context. So that seems really, and more contextual in regards to its relatability, that even though these characters are in a time period that's hundreds of years ago, I still think that their struggles and the way that they go about these conflicts and the themes that the movie is wrestling with, I feel like it is kind of endlessly relatable. And I think Portrait of a Lady on Fire is a great example of that. And speaking of relatability, this is where I have Booksmart as my number 2 pick of the year, Olivia Wilde's Booksmart. And even though I'm not a high school girl, nor have I ever been, I think that this is a very relatable movie, and it's very touching, and it's absolutely hilarious. Beanie Feldstein and Caitlin Dever are just dynamite chemistry. Seeing them at the festival together, you can tell that on and off screen, they're like best friends. And it really, really does show on screen because, again, like you talked about, these are 2 performances that are highlighting something that isn't really often seen in movies that much, or offering a perspective that we don't really get to see that much on film. So I just really do admire this film. It's absolutely hysterical. Every time I watch this movie, it makes me laugh so hard. That doll sequence is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Also, this movie has probably my favorite ending of the year. That it makes me laugh so much, where she's like, do you want to get pancakes? And she's like, fuck yeah, I want to get pancakes. I love it so much. This is such a wonderful movie.
It's so quotable and it's so funny because I could just like think about scenes and I'm laughing. Like in my own head, I'll just be at work thinking about the scene in the car with Jason Sudeikis driving as an Uber driver. That is one of my favorite scenes of the entire year. So funny, and it just sticks with you, and it's completely rewatchable, which is like the beauty of it. I could watch it 1,000 times and it wouldn't get old. So yeah,
not just like, but in that scene, it's not even like the porn on the aux cord. He's like talking to them about like a book that he's writing. He's like, oh, you'll like this. It's about a woman. So that's pretty cool. And she feels the baby kicks. I haven't thought about what she's going to do once she has the baby, but yeah, totally amazing movie. I love it so much. It's also another film that when it came out, I was able to tweet at Olivia Wilde when it actually like went into theaters, and I was kind of saying like, so often as somebody who is really I've dived nose deep into like the film Twitter world, I hear so often that movie and originality is like dead. Like there's no originality in film left, and we've seen everything a million times, and it's just these sequels and superhero films and all these movies that cost $200 million to make. And, we need more inclusivity in film and more diversity. And I was kind of like, hey, guys, if you don't go see Booksmart this weekend, that's why. Like, that's the problem. You got to vote with your dollars. You got to go see movies like this. And I think you got to support these types of films and these type of storytellers.
Yeah, unfortunately for these types of films to, get greenlit, money talks for big studios like this. So it's something like that. So I did go out to theaters I think 3 times to go see it. I was like, here is all my money. So I'm hoping from this point on, things like Booksmart kind of enable other people to be able to make the films that they really want to make, because there are so many other stories by females, by people of color, by all people of all different backgrounds, that their stories deserve to be heard. So it is really exciting.
Yeah, and not just the ones that are about slavery.
We keep having this conversation. Yeah. It's like seeing all of the discourse on Twitter and everything. But it's beautiful when we can all come together and celebrate something like Booksmart.
Absolutely. 100%. So speaking of celebration, we've reached the number 1 film, female directed film of the year. I know what mine is, but what is yours?
Mine is Little Women, directed by Greta Gerwig.
Wonderful.
Of course.
Yeah.
So going into this film, I kind of didn't know what to expect. I've seen the other adaptations of Little Women. I mean, there's so many. It's not shy of adaptations at all. But this one in particular felt like the warmest, coziest hug. I've never been comforted so much by a movie in a long time. Gerwig did an absolute amazing job on this. I think she just really has a knack for capturing life as a girl. as a girl in Lady Bird, and also like a girl going in the flashbacks and as a young adult in this film. I mean, she can see the world through that kind of like youthful, vibrant lens. She has these very like strong protagonists. It's just something that I love to see. And it feels, even though it is like a period piece, it feels nostalgic. Going back and forth, you can kind of connect your own memories, your own youth to what you're seeing on screen, especially dealing with like sisters. Obviously all of the little arguments and everything. It's just so sweet to see that. I called my sister afterwards and I was like, I love you. And, yeah, but at the same time, this feels very modern and timeless. Even though it does take place in post-Civil War America, through all of the themes, through the performances, through the dialogue, and even like the underlying themes in the dialogue that you might not realize at first. I'm really happy that a lot of people are going out to see this. I think it came out at a perfect time, like around Christmas, just because you're able to go with your family and you're able to have a good time. And even I saw Greta Gerwig say that this film was more personal to her than Lady Bird, which I was really surprised about, but actually, like, not after thinking about it a lot, I completely get it. I mean, it's like a young girl, she's a writer, she's dealing with all these kind of obstacles you have to get through at that time, especially, but even still now, because we do have to sit here and make this video only highlighting because people aren't giving it the recognition. And one other thing I want to mention is the costume design in this film is so spectacular.
God. Really good.
I interviewed Eliza Scanlon.
It's got the Oscar in the bag. It's in the bag. The Oscar is in the bag for costume design.
Come on. I will be so disappointed if not.
Yeah.
I interviewed Beth, the sister who plays Beth, Eliza Scanlon.
Oh, awesome.
And that was something I kind of, it was a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And that's something I kind of mentioned to her because I did talk about how spectacular it was and how much when I was watching the film that I could see the characterization of every single sister through their wardrobe. And she was mentioning that they did have different, each sister had a different color palette, and that Laura Dern's character actually had a mixture of all the sisters. So all those meticulous like details and things. And obviously shout out to that costume designer. Her first name is Jacqueline. I can't think of her name right now, but her first name is Jacqueline. And but the mixture of all of this, clearly Greta Gerwig knows her vision and she knows the people she wants to be working on these other aspects of the film. And I think that kind of, that's telling of a great, great director. And the fact that this is her second feature, a follow-up to Lady Bird, I mean, I'm completely blown away.
Yeah. I think the lessons that Greta Gerwig inevitably learned with films like Frances Ha and then Lady Bird, I think she puts those to use in Little Women really well, because when you read books like Pride and Prejudice or Sense and Sensibilities or Jane Eyre or something like this, it's really easy to have that gap between you and the characters because they seem so distant and their problems seem so kind of otherworldly. Like you have these like affluent debutantes. It's like, oh, who cares? Like where's the relevancy in that? But I think because of Greta Gerwig, she's able to prove why these stories are so timeless. And yes, we have seen Little Women adapted to screen in so many ways, but I would argue that none of the adaptations elevate the source material like this movie does. I would say that you're probably going to have people who are seeking out that book more so than ever before because of how good Greta Gerwig is in this movie and the work that she delivers on this film. And not just her direction, but the performances as well. Like Saoirse Ronan and Florence Pugh and Laura Dern, Emma Watson, probably her best performance in years. Yeah, everyone is really, really wonderful in this movie. It made me laugh. I saw this film with my friend, and I didn't know that Bob Odenkirk was in this film, and we didn't know that he played the dad. And he came on the screen, and I was like, "Is that Bob Odenkirk?" Nice, but yeah, it's like the warmest hug and in like the most conceivable way possible. And I love the color palette of the film and how it has this rich vibrancy of their adolescence, and that contrasts with their more depressing adulthood, I guess. That's what we have to look forward to. But I think that that's like a really wonderful decision that comes from something like Greta Gerwig is doing and the non-linear storytelling and the way that she approaches this film that makes this movie so special. And my number one choice, I talked about it in my Best of the Year video, and it's a film that if you didn't see it at the South by Southwest Film Festival, you're not going to be able to see this movie until 2020. So it is the directorial debut of Karen Maine, and it's called Yes, God, Yes. The movie is probably like 85 minutes long, and it's a comedy about this young girl. She's in Catholic school in the 90s, and she hops on this AOL chat and kind of is discovering her own sexuality and discovering things like masturbation and these years of puberty and like what all of these things are, because she's been sheltered her entire life and she's being exposed to all of these things because of the internet. And I think, like Booksmart, this is a movie that tells a perspective and shares a perspective that we just don't see that often. And the idea of women's sexuality is something that is so taboo, especially in movies. Like, you just never see that. Usually, like, women are like the recipients of like sexuality. They're not the primary the push behind that. And I think that this movie tells that story in a really funny way and also a really insightful and touching way. Karen Maine, also talking about movies being personal, she grew up in a Catholic school, and these are things that she also had to deal with. And I think that this film is endlessly rewatchable. I think it's absolutely hysterical, and I cannot wait for everybody to see this movie in 2020.
Yeah, no, I haven't heard of that choice, but of course, with something like Booksmart echoing all of those ideas of, like female sexuality and us getting into all that. I mean, we all have gone, especially this year with Good Boys. It really shows that kind of like going through puberty and like figuring things out. And we don't get that from the female perspective. So it's so refreshing to have those kind of things on screen. Representation in all different aspects is so, so important. It's completely vital because, like we grow up as like young girls and we don't see people like us on screen and we're like, are we weird? Cause like we like this stuff too. Like, so that sounds amazing. I'm so excited to check that out.
Yeah, Karen Maine is really insightful. I got to sit in the Q&A with her, and I hope that not only you, but the viewers get to watch that movie when it comes 2020. We're here, so it should be here relatively soon, but I want to know, what were some of your favorite female-directed films of 2019? Make sure you leave your thoughts and opinions down below. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching today, and I hope you liked today's video. And if you did, you can click on the link down below, or you can subscribe to my channel to see more movie reviews and movie-related things. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.